I'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Second order of business, approve the minutes of October 12th. I wasn't here, so I can't even vote on them. Anybody have any comments, concerns?
I did make a couple of corrections since they've been sent out, a couple of spelling errors.
Are these the corrected ones?
Yes.
Okay, so what we have is what you corrected?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll make a motion to accept and approve these minutes.
Which one is the correction?
The one in front of you are corrected.
Yeah,
This
this is
is
the
correct?
statement
Yeah.
one, yeah.
I'm gonna change my name a few times.
Subject is, all right, we'll change the name.
Revella with it, R-E-V-E-L.
Oh, okay.
R.E.
Right,
I don't know what
right,
nationality
R.E.
Revella is. Unfortunately.
It's a boat, isn't it, Roboballo?
It
Yeah.
might be Jewish or something.
All
now.
right.
Still a lot of vowels.
Is
How
that a
about,
s-
what time's the meeting adjourned, you know?
I do not know.
Oh, gosh, I don't remember what time we adjourned
We
here.
did adjourn.
Oh, no. I know they got me down for leaving early at 7:30. I know it couldn't have been much longer.
It wasn't
No, it
much
wasn't much
longer.
longer than that. It was probably close, 7:45, 8
Yeah.
o'clock. So is there a second of those changes?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 3, review old high school status and recommendations. Anything new?
Do we have anything new? I don't know if we have anything new. At the last meeting, the committee voted to recommend that the Board of Selectmen, that an attempt to use the building for municipal uses be made, and further that it be presented to the public in the form of a non-binding question. The committee believes that the municipal use option with the required funding be presented to the public. So one of the issues that we're having is that I'm having is how we do that on a ballot question. Is it possible to do a concise ballot question that addresses what the committee's looking for? And beyond that, I will say that as we go through the budget process, the school is maintaining the property is costing us somewhere around $200,000 plus a year. We don't have that type of funding in the operating budget to go for any extended period of time, so. I still go back to my initial recommendation. As much as I hate to do it, and I know it's something that we may regret years down the line, but I still think that we need to put it on the market. If the price doesn't come in at a certain value, maybe we take it off the market. But
Would that be just the building or the building and grounds also?
do the building and grounds unless we want to exclude a portion of it. The public water supply takes up pretty much the whole fields in the back.
But there are fields in the back that are, I think,
Being used.
yeah.
Being used.
Right,
And the
so-
school's being used.
Yeah, the school, yeah.
Right, right. So just the replacement factor, if the fields went with the sale of the property, I mean, just that alone is a big factor. I mean, the cost to replace that minus any realtor's fees that we would get, we would end up really with almost $0 in fields.
Yes, so there are baseball fields on Route 177 that are leased out by the Westport Youth, I think Athletic Association, I may have that name wrong. And there's another set of soccer fields off Sanford Road that is on town property that are leased out by the soccer group. So there are additional fields in town.
To be used by the schools.
How accessible they are, I don't know.
Well, we use the soccer fields now, Jim. We pay rent to use those soccer fields now. On the Stafford Road.
So I guess I'm asking two things. One, to consider if the board or the committee wants to reconsider their recommendation, and if not, how do we present it to the public in a way that can get us back some
Well, I guess you
information?
could just have a check-off box option that, it's option A, sell the school, But you have to be, you have to be able to explain what the consequences are
Yeah.
of each choice.
Right.
So you sell the school, keep the school, what was the third option?
Municipal building?
Municipal
Yeah, it was
building
keep the
Yeah.
school for
Municipal
municipal
uses.
use.
for municipal use.
Or keep,
And
or use
wasn't-
it for
Could be
affordable
tearing
housing.
down.
Or,
the school.
or, right,
Right.
tearing down the school, right.
Keeping the property.
Which would cost out-of-pocket money. I mean, so what was the expected cost?
You know, this goes
2
back when we
million?
were building the new school, I think it was around 2.5 million to
Right.
tear that
Probably,
down. So
you
you
probably got three and a half.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So you spend 3.5 and you end up with nothing. So, I mean, I think in order for the general public to make a decision, they haven't seen the detail certainly that we have and perhaps understand all the consequences. So if that were to be attempted, that's now a big list because you have to explain. It can't just be A, B, or C to do that. So,
There was
I
also
get
some
it.
talk about doing it as some type of survey, but, you don't know what kind of response you're gonna get. In a survey, you can put more detail in there, right?
right.
Yeah.
But you don't know who's gonna respond.
I think there has to be some sort of campaign, if you will, beforehand to get all these options out on the table and clarify for the public what the ramifications of each of those options are. Some of us that were involved, and I see Tony there on the screen, back when we were on the school building committee, they went through a ton of stuff like that, public forums and separate meetings with different stakeholder groups, all the different options that were on the table. There was, a tremendous amount of analysis went into that before that final decision was made. And I feel that, that intelligent decision that was made at the end was largely due to that due diligence that was paid beforehand, so that people really did have an opportunity to understand, option A means this, option B means that, and that there's trade-offs and compromises involved with each. But, and then of course I've realized, that extends the timeline, or, makes it, would make it a bit of a crunch if we were looking to get a question on the ballot for April timeframe. But
I know there was an attempt made, a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now, to have a public forum, but it was in the middle of COVID and it wasn't very well advertised nor attended. So, maybe there should be.
We had a public forum.
Well,
We had a-
we did have, but was it open? Did very many people come though? Because wasn't it the height of COVID?
Probably had 20 people there,
yeah,
at least.
Yeah.
yeah.
They gave a lot of suggestions, and there were things in writing, things ended up in the newspaper and so on.
Yeah.
Well, I'd put your attention, I would suggest that the town pay the $200,000 and at least keep that building for another year. Because I think if you get rid of it, I think you're gonna be very sorry.
So,
Jim?
Yeah?
Jim, can I ask Jim what the reaction of the selectmen or select board when this recommendation came up?
it's a good question. Offhand, I don't know. I don't think it was I don't think we got into a lot of detail with it.
I think I remember seeing that meeting, and they were more confused about how to present these options to the public. I mean, that was really, they were confused as to how they were gonna achieve that.
It's difficult with a ballot question. There are so many options with this.
Yeah, you really can't explain anything other than, I guess, vote means that you do, no vote means you don't, or something like that. You really can't go into depth, or else it's gonna be a 3-page ballot. Which I don't
At this
think would-
point right now, they're not gonna spend millions more to keep that school, but they might spend 200,000 while we get our stuff together here. There are people that wanna use it, and I think that it's of use.
Yeah, I think like Lauren said, getting the word out, Jim, I think once the Board of Selectmen start talking it up a little bit more, and you could certainly get some articles in the paper of what the committee or the town is thinking about doing, I mean, that will certainly go a long way to get people interested.
I
So-
mean, the option of sale, though, is, let's say that you put a cap on what you need to get for the school. If you don't get the cap, then what happens?
Well, then,
Yeah.
Then you're stuck, you're back at square one, and like, okay, now what do? It probably should be an option A, if we don't get this, then we have to do this. Or we knock it down or we utilize it some other way. Because my history with schools and schools that have been sold or police departments or whatever, or is you don't get any money for these buildings.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if we got $11 million.
Oh, I would never think you get $11 million for that building. If you got to find somebody $11 million, I'd say sell it. But I don't see how you'd ever get even close to that.
So how do we
Yeah,
move on?
and that's my thoughts too, Sean. Usually these schools, these towns end up selling them for $1 just to get rid of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Because the upgrade, for someone to buy the school to upgrade it to whatever they're going to use it for, is going to cost them $10 million.
Yeah, plus, I think they were looking
Yeah,
25
yeah,
to
depending what they're
35
using it
million,
for.
even for
Right,
educational
right,
uses
right.
to bring it up to.
What would be the impact if we spent the money to tear down the building, the 2.5 million, 3 million, whatever it is, and then delivered basically a clear site, offered that to developers? Was there anything mention of that in the appraisal of what the value could be if it were a cleared site?
Talked about selling it as house lots and it just wasn't worth it.
Right, there's only 16 lots?
I think that's what they came up with.
16 buildable lots.
So that's, a developer paid about $1.2 million for the land.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd pretty much,
You
at
wouldn't get
best,
your money
be
back for
break
tearing it
even.
down.
You know, the
Yeah.
cost to tear it down would be what you would recoup with the sale of the land. Probably be a little less than that.
You know that one of these days you're gonna build a new school. I won't be alive, but you're gonna build a new school. Where are you gonna build it?
I agree with Mr. Gifford.
You don't wanna think about that, but that's the future, and
Yeah.
it's coming, and it's gonna be a disaster. That's the way Westport usually works. They wait and wait and wait until it's an absolute disaster, and then we have to do something about it. Now, I think that you gotta make some plans, and one of the plans would be to keep that building right now and see if we can get people in it, or see what we're gonna come up with. We've come up with a lot of ideas, but I haven't seen any fish bite.
So any use of the building, whether it's educational, whether it's municipal, whatever, there's a cost to it, right? And we're looking at a minimum of $200,000 a year, minimum, and that's just to keep the doors open and the heat on and insure it. Where's that 200 come from? I don't have an answer for that. I don't have,
Well, it's been in the budget for the last 2 years, right?
well, we budgeted 100 last year for it, and then we did a warrant article for $200,000 from free cash. So we used 100 from the budget, and we're hopefully budgeting 100 to 125 again this year, and we'll have some leftover funds in the warrant article, but we may have to add another warrant article to
To add
infuse
to
some
that.
free cash to get it going.
Where does the
And
money,
Jim, the schools, we're spending what, 50,000 the school?
For the
For the maintenance?
50,000, well, yeah, up to 50,000.
What are you gonna pay to move the superintendent? Where's that office gonna go?
Right.
Requires the top floor of the town hall if you needed space. And the whole point is that you've got it, and you've got it for $200,000? Believe me, that's cheap.
200 plus.
Yeah,
Chip.
but I mean, what are you gonna do with the superintendent? What are you gonna do if you need to put more kids in another school? Where?
We were talking about that stuff last night at
What you
our
do?
budget workshop.
I bet you do, Tony.
Jim, where does the money come from? I'm not familiar with how the town works that much. All the buildings in town,
Mhm.
they all have expenses, they all have insurance, they all have this, they all have that. Where does all that money come from?
So the town side picks up all the insurance for all the buildings. And that's going up
You got
substantially over the last
maintenance, you
couple
got
of years.
heat, you got light, you got electric, you got all
Each-
the expenses for all these different places. Now, if you
Each
put all
building
the-
has its own budget, right? So
But if
that-
you put all those people in that building,
Mhm.
you gotta take into consideration, you're not paying for all these other buildings anymore.
Right. And I know there's some disagreement, but when the UTile did their study on that building, they're talking, $30 million to bring that up to standard so that we can move into that building. And then the question is, if you're gonna spend $30 million, are you better off spending $30 million and building a brand-new facility that actually was designed to meet the needs that we're looking for. Could we build a facility less than $30 million? Can we build a municipal facility less than $30 million to serve the same purpose and actually get what you want for a building, as opposed to fitting into a school? I don't know the answer to that, but I gotta believe the costs are close.
I would think so. I mean, it's the same thing like when you buy an old house. Most of the time, it's easier to knock it down, start from scratch, than try to rebuild it from the inside out.
You had 7 through 12 there. I didn't see you spend 30 million to put them in there.
No, and
They were in there, I know it was not acceptable, and it had a lot of things missing. But you had all the 7th grade right through the 12th grade in there. I mean, I don't know how that happened. I know you were all in the cellar and every other place. But the point is that it's a large building, and you can put a lot of kids in it, and they can go back in it tomorrow.
they could. Educational uses, they can move right in. If we change the use from educational, we change the use category, then we have to start reading the new building codes.
Yep.
Now, does the entire building have to be retrofitted? So I know that the municipal portion of it, they're talking 25-30% of the building, right? It's really, if you took the annex and this building
Mhm.
and put them in, not including council on aging, but just the municipal offices, would only take up about 30% of the building. So could it be done in stages such that the retrofitting, the code compliance could be done on just the first floor? Or just the, second floor, or just a portion of the building, the media center out, or the other way? I mean, to do it in stages.
Possible, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Besides the administration portion there in the current building, what other parts of it are still in use or usable? I think the gym is.
The gym, I
the gym
guess,
is
there was
open, right?
some activity there this weekend, right?
Defer to the
some-
superintendent on
If
that.
I'm being recognized, I'd be happy to,
Yes.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Come
Come on up to the table.
We actually are running our extended day program, which is wildly popular and continues to grow. And so if that, we've been kind of preparing for two things, staying and going. So in the going piece, we would have to move our administrative offices into the remaining buildings that we have currently, which are already pretty tight. The extended day, we really don't know what we would have to do with that, but it is growing exponentially. So, but it is there. We've also, we just brought back Westport Recreation to basketball there. We were playing in Tiverton for a little while, so. And we are opening it up to people that want to use it.
See, I think the gymnasium has a use, and some of that building has a potential good use. So is there thought about, and that probably has been, taking down some of the building and retrofitting the rest of it to meet the needs of offices, keeping the gymnasium, because it's a public use that's beneficial.
Jim, right now, is the auditorium, the gym, and the cafeteria, or the kitchen, any of that being used?
The gym is, I don't know about the auditorium and cafeteria.
Unless if somebody wants to rent it out, but the cafeteria has been, well, let me rephrase it. Cafeteria has been used by the Board of Health during vaccine clinics and things of that nature. I mean, it's a great kitchen, I'll be honest with you. That kitchen, I wish we could transplant that kitchen into the new school, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Plus it has the
That's a good reason for that. If you could find, if you want to use that for the municipal building, and you get that, eventually you're gonna use all this stuff.
Right.
It's gonna take a little while to get organized, but you're gonna do this. And as far as knocking part of that building down, I think that's not feasible, because you're gonna outgrow everything you do. You're gonna need more room. Why would you take some of that building and knock it down when you're gonna heat it and light it and the whole 9 yards anyhow? Just leave it there and see if you use it down the road in a couple of
Like
years.
the council on aging needs additional space. They don't have enough room to hold their current programs. They need more space.
I know that Michelle DePose has been working with
Right,
Bev.
Beverly, yeah,
Yeah.
and they really need additional space. So, I mean, it would serve a lot of purposes
Right.
for various communities.
And like you say, everything's growing every year. Things are getting bigger and bigger. If you got the space, so if it's closed up, you just don't use that area. When you need it, it's there. Why pay to knock it down?
Well,
Yeah.
It doesn't
No,
make any sense.
so then the question is, where do you get the money to pay for it to keep it up?
Well, that's the thing. Well, if you gotta make a decision what you're gonna do with it.
Right.
If you're gonna start getting the municipal buildings in there, it's gonna start to get used, even if you do it in stages. It's gonna come around.
I'm not in favor of, to me, that's a valuable piece of land just because of the location. It's right off 88, it's in the center of the population center of the town. It's a really good location for a lot of things,
Right.
you know, but if we could get 11 million for the building, that's be a different story, but I'm not a big fan of getting rid of all the grounds and everything.
And I don't believe that building needs that much work. I've been in that building. It's in good shape. It's not like you gotta rehab the whole building.
Well, to meet code, I guess you do.
Yeah.
Well, to
Meet
meet
code as a
it
municipal
depends what you're
building.
gonna do with it.
Yes.
Yeah,
When you
depends
say
on which
meet
code, right? But I mean, I agree, like what you guys have just said, you know, I think there's definitely got to be more scope for additional community activities, recreational purposes,
Right.
cultural events, council on aging, you know, and things.
Public
that-
health, yeah.
Public
yeah,
health,
right.
and things that we haven't even thought of yet, you know, even like putting it out to the community. Hey, this space is available to rent. If you want to run an event, run it here. Keep it in town. Don't go to Tiverton.
You
Don't go
could
to,
have
you know,
theater groups
theater,
that start
yeah, all
up.
kinds of
Right,
things, all
right.
kinds of things. And because again, like you said, it's such a prime location.
Yeah.
Such a prime location. It would be the ideal spot to be doing more community-oriented activities, more municipals.
Has there been any prospects about leasing or somebody even thinking about leasing or renting or whatever?
I think it's been discussed. I think the school department's looked into leasing it, and they have leased portions of it, I think, or had events where they've done.
But any
it.
outside
But it's-
interest?
But-
Have you had any nibbles?
I have not, no, but I think the school department has put some feelers out there for.
I think
Others.
generally it's not well known that it's possible though. That's got to be a big part of it too.
I'm wondering if you could do a multi-use, municipal and private sector, to help pay the cost of actually keeping the building. You know, whether some organization or whatever the case may be takes out some of the building, whatever that may be, if there would be an interest in that.
Sean, keep in mind, so if it was decided that we would use that high school for municipal use, the idea, at least what the committee decided last time, was that then we would go ahead and sell off the town hall, the annex, and, maybe, and the council on aging, if all those people moved into the high school.
A lot of dependencies.
And it's
Which in some ways are more marketable because they're smaller pieces.
Different use location. I mean, the use location for a business in this particular building, for instance, would be much better than at the high school, I think, since it's zoned that way. You know, and I don't know if you would do some kind of housing or whatever you would do with the other buildings, but. But again, I don't know if you get much money for any of these buildings. I mean, I've never seen a building like of this type, the 40s and 50s municipal buildings, they get sold and you get any money whatsoever for them other than getting rid of them off your inventory.
Yeah, I think that's right, but I also have to keep in mind that, there's no question, it sounds like the town could fill the building and make use of it. The reality of it is this, when the change of use, as was explained in the study, the change of use triggers enormous amounts of changes to that building that drives the cost to this,
Right.
$29, $30 million range. And so, does the town have, everything you're saying, I don't disagree with, but, and we don't want to be short-sighted, but if.
Show me the
I know
money.
Jim is thinking, where are we going to get that money? Is the
Right.
town going, if you said to the town, do you want to spend $30 million and move all the municipal offices into a renovated old high school building? Or do you want to sell the building for, let's say, 10 million or 8 million even, and renovate the building you're in now, the existing town hall, and put an addition on so that you could consolidate the annex departments into one building and do all that for, I don't know, let's say 10 million or something? It would almost be a wash against what you get in your proceeds if you could get that. for the existing building. And, or even if you couldn't get 10 million, if you got 5 million, you're still, you know, the net cost of the town might be, would be well under 10 million. And so you compare that against the $30 million price tag to keep the building and modernize it and move all these offices into it.
Well, I think that you run into the same problem with this building as soon as you start doing any renovation. It triggers all these code issues. So you start renovating the existing town hall and putting an addition. The estimated cost for that was around $20 million, isn't that right, Jim? To adding an addition to this building, to bring the annex over and doing the sub-work on here, it was the same price per square foot.
We're looking $500-600 a square foot.
Right, right. And so it was, their price tag, their estimate was about 20 million to do that.
We've talked about a lot of these buildings for a while now. As far as adding to them, the council on aging can't add to that building, there's no room. This one, I thought there was a problem with putting an addition on. Right now, you're overcrowded in all these buildings. If you can't add to them, or if you're gonna spend all that money to put an addition on and bring this up to code, whatever, it's gonna cost a lot of money. All these buildings need a lot of work, probably more than that, the high school.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is, you know, if we want to do something with the high school, we need to do it right away.
Well,
Whereas these buildings, you know, you could get another 4 or 5 years,
the
20
thing
years out of it
with the high
without
school
doing
is,
much, you know?
we gotta make a decision what we're gonna do and
Right.
get permission to do it somehow.
Well,
That's what we're gonna do.
I would say the first thing we have to do is just get the $200,000 for another year, because this isn't gonna happen by May or whatever.
Right,
Yeah, I'd agree with that,
right.
totally.
And ultimately, it will be up to the voters. I mean, either they're gonna be willing to borrow the money to renovate it or not. I mean, if there's a no vote on that, problem solved. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the end of the line. I mean, that's where you're at.
But you got different phases on a no vote, that's the problem. You know, what's the
Yeah.
no vote mean? No vote means you don't keep it, you sell the school,
Or
you
does
sell
it
the
just
grounds, does it
mean,
mean,
right,
you know?
we
you-
just don't wanna spend that much money.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
There's a
if
lot
if
of,
it's less money, is it okay? Is it, yeah,
That's what I mean, you gotta explain everything somehow.
right.
right.
To the people to understand what they're voting for.
Yeah.
Usually you vote for a referendum on the ballot, you don't really know what you're talking about. You get done reading it, it doesn't even make sense anymore.
Well, it's not that important unless it's a campaigned referendum ballot. In other words, you're out there.
It's gotta be explained
explaining.
somehow by selectmen or whatever. Put it out there so people can read it, put it in the paper, however you're gonna get it out there. It's gotta be more than a yes or no vote. That's, where you wanna be.
Jim, what about, spending a little bit of money to get a true feasibility study done on the building to tell us, much more accurate number of what it would cost to renovate that? I mean, would 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, would that be enough for a feasibility study, you think?
I don't know. Yeah, I think what we did was, you know, that's in that $10,000-$15,000 range. I think you would get something very similar to what we already have.
Yeah.
You know, they used, I don't know if it's a good thing, but they used the same estimator as we did with the school.
To get an accurate feasibility study is like everything else. What are you gonna do with the building?
Right.
How much is it gonna cost? What do you wanna do with it?
Yeah.
That's what you gotta know.
Right.
Not gonna be the
Yeah.
same. If you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, the price is different.
And then on the outside, does the town have the capability to manage a project like that? I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into this. Do we have the resources, do we have the staff to manage all the different variables that we're looking at? You know, you're looking at redoing a building up there at the high school, you're looking at either selling or redoing these buildings here, the annex, the town hall,
That's a
the
big
council on
scope.
aging. You know,
It's a really big scope of work and a big varying scope of work.
we're just trying to keep the doors open in some of these offices and keep them staffed during the day so somebody can answer the phone or when somebody walks in, they can help them
that's a
out.
challenge.
And that's a challenge.
Well, it's not gonna be easy, that's for sure, no matter what we do.
So I guess one of the things I was looking for tonight is I was struggling with the ballot question. So I don't know if there's another way we can address that, if you guys have any ideas on that.
Well,
Whether it's a
you
ballot-
probably need 2 ballot questions.
Right. I think a ballot question's fine, as long as everybody understands what they're voting for.
Yeah, I mean,
It gets
yes,
explained ahead of
Yeah.
time, so that they understand what they're voting for.
And to do that properly, we maybe need to do a bit more of the feasibility side too. So, that, okay, if it went with option
We've
B,
done a
what
So
few
that
of
we
them,
have
but,
answers,
you know.
right?
Yeah, yeah. Because yeah, as soon as you leave doubt and uncertainty in people's minds, they're just gonna go no.
No, right. When in doubt, say no.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Bill had something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted, you're in the process of doing the budget right now. As a matter of fact, you've nearly finalized it. The whole point is that I think it's time for us to put the $200,000 in there and at least keep that building. You don't have any choice. What are you gonna do? What, in a few months, you're gonna tell the superintendent, grab all your stuff and move? And, I mean, it's a building that has a gym, it has an auditorium, it has an acceptable kitchen. Just to get something like that is a big deal. Where do you have it in the other building? In Town Hall, or in the annex over there, that you've got any kind of facility like that? I think that you at least need to, as you did last year, put in the $200,000. I know it sounds like a lot of money when you can't find $5. But the whole point is, I think you gotta make plans to keep it for another year. You can always do other things, but I mean, you need to know right now what you're gonna do next year. Otherwise, you're gonna sit there paying for it anyway.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I think it's gotta be in the budget this year, even if we wanted to
yeah.
make a decision and sell it next week. It's still gonna take,
I think
6
so,
months to
because-
18 months to sell it, and then closing. I don't see us closing before next summer if we put it up for sale in a couple of months. So yes, Bill, I agree, we need to fund it somehow. I don't have 200,000 in the budget to fund it, so we're gonna be looking at free cash to do that.
So I have a question, gonna go on a different angle here. So assuming we find the money, but put it in the budget, keep it for another year, keep the superintendent and his staff and folks where they're at, and no disruption. We've got the gym, the other parts of it that are usable. If we were to say, okay, this is the asset, we've got this building, we've got administration offices, we've got kitchen, we've got space, auditorium, gym. If we were to put more effort into advertising that as a space to be used for events, activities, what would we be able to get away with before we would be bumping up against the change of use classification? Like how much, what would we be able to hold there in terms of activities and events and so on that could still be classified as educational in some way?
That it wouldn't change the use, the
Mm.
current use.
Mm.
It's a good question.
Yeah, and I don't have the answer, but I would think in general, if the auditorium is being used for auditorium purposes, you're not changing the use. If the
Yeah.
classroom's a classroom purpose, if the gym's being
That's-
used for
that's the use.
recreational.
If that's the way it
Yeah.
works, yeah,
Right.
you should be able to use those facilities for what they're designed for,
Yeah,
without a change of use.
right.
You know,
So
if
we
you
can
bring
do things like craft fairs, holiday
They
fairs,
do that now, so,
performances,
right.
But in the
farm- indoor
meantime,
indoor
if we do
farmers
fund
market.
this thing for another year, we can't just say, put it aside for a year and start talking next
No.
year. You gotta start doing something now.
Yes, Fisher cut bait,
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. We need to make a
Right,
decision
we
one
gotta
way
make
or
some
the other
decisions
very
on a
shortly.
few things.
And I agree with Bill, we're looking, we need to fund it for another year, because
Yeah.
we're gonna own it for another
Yeah.
year.
I agree with that, but we gotta start to work, see where we're going and what we're gonna do. And you gotta get it out to the public.
Yeah,
You gotta explain it in depth so that they know what they're voting for.
yeah, for
So
sure.
is that the charge of this committee to get it out to the public, or who gets it out to the
No.
public?
Doesn't that have to go before the selectmen to decide how they're gonna put it in the paper or what they're gonna do, or somebody has to write it up, or?
yeah, aren't we just an advisory committee?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Jim, I think the more that it gets talked about and brought up at Board of Selectmen's meetings, and the more they talk it up, obviously the word will get out. But at a minimum, we need to start doing that now. They need to start, getting that out there, that they're considering, moving out of these old buildings, moving into the high school, or, at least trying to see if that's gonna work, so. They just need to start talking it up. I mean, that's what I would do.
and then see if it's rejected.
Yeah, you probably get a good sense.
So, that's what we wanna do, and see if the town says, oh, no, we don't wanna do that. We don't hear.
Yeah, I think too often decisions were made in the past by a few that, without a lot of consideration on certain
And
properties.
also, and because of the uncertainty of the building, there are things that, I know, the superintendent's had many ideas and others have had many ideas on things we could do with that building, but because of the uncertainty, it's kind of hard to commit to any particular group or person, about, use of the building. So I think once that is decided, that would certainly give us more leverage and get more people in there to use the property.
What type of revenue do you think you could bring in? I mean, are we looking at 50,000 a year, 200,000 a year?
To me, you need to bring in whatever it costs to keep the thing open.
And then is,
Otherwise, you're shoveling against the tide.
and I know the school department budget is gonna be just as bad, if not worse than the town budget, but has the school committee thought about putting any resources or funding into the building to keep it open for another year?
They gotta spend $100 on the superintendent anyway. The way you vote it, we gotta spend some money. So the school department is responsible for the superintendent. I'm not saying 200,000, but I mean, certainly they're gonna be part of the rental.
Yeah, we do pay some now, Bill. We do pay.
I know, I heard you say that, Tony, yeah.
So does this discussion to the public come before or after the Diamond vote, or before or after an override discussion? Where in the scenario should this fit in?
That's a loaded ballot right there.
Pull the pin.
You know, it's
Yes,
just,
pull the pin, I think that's a
Pull the
good
pin and run
pull the
away.
pin.
it's
Yeah.
just another variable, it's just another,
Right, I
You know,
mean,
it's,
it's, as Bill had said, I mean, so long and forever, we always wait until our backs are up against the wall, and then it's like, well, we have to do this now, and people never feel that they get transparency for, well, what's the next thing, what's the next thing, what's the next thing? I mean, I just brought up 3 quick things that in total are a lot of money in total. But people have to be aware that there are a lot of things on the plate, and that the people around this table and the select board and everyone that's involved in town government is very challenged to do their jobs every day because of the lack of funding. And so it's, there are a lot of issues to be discussed.
You've got to pay the $200,000 in the future for as long as it takes. Don't tell me that you're gonna reach a point where you can say, oh, we don't have to pay the 200 unless you've got some great idea, which we're looking for. So it isn't a matter of just 200,000 for this year, you need 200,000 going forward, period.
Right.
This is an ongoing thing, it's just, it's.
And in the
one
scope
those
of,
things you've got to do.
in the scope of the budget, that's short money. I mean, in the scope of, 50,
Well, what
60,
it gives you it is.
yeah, 50, 60, $70 million budget in total, 200,000 is short money.
$200,000 you don't have, though.
Right, but it's
So it comes
200 that
down
we
to-
don't have.
Yeah, when
Right.
you're trying to find $5.
what 4 positions do you cut to fund that 200,000?
Yeah.
Right.
Where does it come
That's
from?
essentially where we are now.
Right.
If you wanna fund anything, whether it's 20,000, 200, or a
It's,
million,
it's taking away from something
you're
else.
taking away from somewhere else.
I get it.
Every time we have one of these meetings, we're out swaying in the wind. Let's not wrap this one up without going to the selectmen and tell them that as far as this committee is concerned, you've got to pay $200,000 this year and possibly in the future, until a decision is made. They can't just sit back, and every time we have something to say, it's kind of ignored. It's not brought before the selectmen as, here's what we need to do. Well, what we do need to do is spend $200,000 a year in the future, until a decision's made. And that's getting off cheaply.
I think if we, and I agree with you, Bill, I think, and I think if we position it accurately and correctly as we're paying 200,000 to keep this building in use, and what we're getting for that 200,000 is the administrative offices, superintendent, a usable gym, a usable auditorium, a usable kitchen area, you know, all, and let, you know, list those assets that we know we can utilize in some way, shape, or form, you know, that we can utilize it, we can advertise that, we can use that as a space to bring some revenue in as well. So if we, you
start
know,
getting some money
Yeah,
to
if-
accumulating some
if-
money,
if
so
we-
you're not really paying all the whole 200,000.
exactly,
You
if we get
some
it
of
out
back.
there that's usable space, that it's sellable, it's
Right.
rentable space, then that makes it, I think, you know, that makes it a more realistic proposition. That, well, okay, we're spending 200,000, but maybe we'll get 50,000 back, 100,000 back.
You're gonna get something.
We'll get something, and year on year, that something will
It should
grow
increase
as
as we go
word
along.
gets out there. Yeah. But I think Bill's absolutely right. You know, we're gonna have to this year for sure. It sounds like, you know, there's no other option. It's got to be on there. The 200,000 to keep it running for another year at least. And in terms of, you know, longer term, which of course is, you know, as it says on the committee name, you know, clearly it sounds like we still need to do a bit more brainstorming around some of these ideas and what's possible and what's feasible. You know, certainly the change of use thing, that for me is huge. You know, talking about spending $30 million to renovate an old building, it's like,
You're not gonna do that.
Well, I think
Why
that segues right into the next steps. Where do we go from here? Where do we as a committee go from here?
I mean, reiterate to the select board, I mean, we are just an advisory board, reiterate to the select board, it is in their lap. I mean, it is within their scope to determine what the course of action is. We've recommended what our preference is for the use of the building going forward. And it's up to them to determine how they want to proceed in getting the public's feedback, if that's what they're looking for. But also, you know, indicate, as we've just said, that it's gonna take time, and at minimum, at least one more year has to be invested in maintaining that building. There's no other way. I mean, if we don't have the money, that means we don't pay the insurance. If we don't pay the insurance and it goes up in smoke the next day, then I guess problem solved, right?
That solves our demolition problem.
You know, but, I mean, it behooves them to preserve and to protect the asset. I mean, they oversee those assets, and it's their priority to make sure that those assets are protected, so.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Cindy. I think most of the people on this committee over the years have said the same thing. And even though initially, years ago, I was for getting rid of it. But I think most of us have said, go ahead, let's try to see if we can't use the building. I think people want to definitely keep the property, use the building if possible, sell off the other buildings, but like Cindy said, ultimately, it is on the Board of Selectmen to move forward one way or the other. If they want to put it on a ballot and see how the town feels, fine. You know, and then this committee and theirs and others could certainly help, you know, move that along, but, I mean, I think we all in agreement on where we want, you know, what we want to do with the property.
If we do keep it, and getting back to the issue of how can we generate some revenue to help offset the carrying costs, the 200 or 300,000. So if you remember our meeting that we were talking about earlier, the meeting that happened back in March last year, there was interest from not only the Council on Aging, but the food pantry said they needed space, and something, second half learning.
Police Academy?
Police Academy, that's right. And I don't know if you can rent the sports fields to other, you know, groups beside just the not the high school kids, but some outside groups or something. But those are some ideas for generating some revenue. The one other point I want to bring up, and this will come up too when you look at the matrix of all the ramifications, is if it did happen, if it did come to pass that we were able to renovate the building entirely and move all the, excuse me, the town offices there, vacating the town hall and the annex and the council on aging. Those three buildings are considered historic and have received in the past considerable amount of CPA monies for their upkeep. So there may be restrictions on, that would impact the potential sale or lease of those buildings. So it's, and I don't know exactly what that would be, but it is a consideration to be thought of, is we're gonna have three buildings which aren't gonna be a slam dunk to dispense of. There may be, we have to, anyway, those are another bridge we might have to cross.
Okay, anything else? So I guess the recommendation is to tell the selectmen, suggest to the selectmen that they spend the $200,000 and keep it for another year while
Keep
we
the
mull
lights on.
over decisions.
And they too.
So I'll take that in the form of motion. Somebody wants to put that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. All right.
And Sean, where do we, or Jim, where do we stand then on the question of a ballot question? And out of, which was your original concern here?
So I'm fine with a ballot question. If you guys want to write it up, I'll be happy to submit it.
I seem to
I just
recall-
don't know, I've tried, and I just look at, I don't think it's, I don't
can't
see
put it
how
in
you
a
do a
ballot
ballot question and actually get a response that's gonna be valuable and actually what people are looking for.
I mean, I
Before you
seem to
do a
recall,
ballot
it-
question, you have to do something in the paper or get something for the public to
Right.
read, or what it's about, what it's involved, each one of these decisions, what are you voting for? Then you can put it on the ballot, but you have to explain it to them. People don't understand what we've been doing all this time.
right, right. I mean, I think the ballot question was Brian's idea. And, of course, he's not here tonight, but to solve that, to answer that question. But, I mean, I don't think a ballot question is the right way to go, because I think I don't think you're going to get the true answer. People will,
Right.
Yeah.
And there's too many moving parts. to
yeah,
it.
it could be too dismissive to just toss it, and
Somehow,
yeah.
I don't know.
So, I mean, go back to another public forum, go back to, when we need to ask for money, people will pay attention. I mean, it's not a subject that a lot of people pay attention to, because it doesn't impact them right there in their face, right there today. But if they're being faced with a question of, this is gonna cost money, how much is up to you. Then I think you get people more engaged. But a question that just goes out there, to you, what would you like to have
A,
done
B,
with the
C, or
school?
D.
Yeah.
I don't think people will take it seriously enough to get a good sample of truly what the pulse is, because that's what Brian was shooting for. He wanted to get an idea whether or not the townspeople had that attachment to the building and whether they felt that it was important. You ask them for money, then they'll make a decision. And it's not always no. I mean, it's, at least then they have reason to put some skin in the game to think about it a little bit more closely. But
I mean, very simply, it's really a matter of, do you feel the town should, revamp their current town buildings, or should we consolidate into the old high school? I mean, that's the basic question, and then obviously, as we have numbers that are available with these things will cost, then you can start getting that out, but initially, we want people to just think about, hey, should we close down those other town buildings and move everyone into the high school? I mean, that's the basic question. And I think most people could see that and understand that and answer that. Now, when you tell them that, hey, it's 50 million for this or 10 million for that, sure, that will change a lot of minds and sway people, but the initial question of whether or not, should we move out of these buildings and move into this building, or should we not do that? I mean, I think that's the first thing we need to ask.
I think that's okay as a survey, but
No problem with 100 million, I shouldn't think 200,000 would be a big problem.
Yeah, no, I think the 200,000 we have to do. I
Yeah,
don't
there's
see any way
no, there's
around
no
it.
option
So
on the
that's,
200,000.
I
There really
think-
isn't an option on 200,000.
No,
I think we're with you on that. I don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean,
And it's 200,000 with no maintenance, right? You know, just
right.
to keeping the heat on. I mean, the boiler goes down, or, you know, we had trouble with the well this year, so that was more expensive. If it was a bigger issue with the well, you know, it could, you know, that 200,000 can go up to 400,000. You don't know, so.
Right.
And it's good to have it occupied, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
The insurance
Oh, yeah,
goes up if
absolutely.
it's not occupied, so
Right.
that there's benefits to the school department being in there while we still own it. But I just want to point out that, you know, there's a number of variables with this whole project, right? You know, does everybody, I think if we ask the question, do we want to put everybody into one building up the high school? I think the answer would probably be yes.
Yes.
If we add a dollar figure to that, I think the answer is probably no, right? I think if we ask another question, is do people like the town hall and its current location? Would they like an addition there? That'd probably be yes. But if we add $10, $12 million, again, we're no. So everything, we need to be careful the way we phrase and present this to the public because, yeah.
And that's why I feel like I was starting to say a second ago was those kinds of questions I think work better as a survey rather than as ballot questions. Because if we did a survey, option A, B, C, D, E, this is what it would entail, this is what it would cost, what are your thoughts? You know, would you agree, not agree, strongly agree, you know, however you want to, you know, structure the survey. That would give us, I think, that pulse check from around the town of how people are thinking. But it would also, I think, it would also be informative for us and the Board of Selectmen in terms of kind of narrowing down the field a bit. You know, it's like, okay, well, maybe option D is just, you know, completely out of, you know, no one wants that. So, you know, to go down that route might be, you know, just a lost battle. And then from those survey results, maybe then that could help to steer us in the direction of, all right, which one of these options, you know, do we want to investigate more thoroughly, so we can then go back and do that public information campaign that explains things and rationalizes it a bit better, and then put it on the ballot as an A or B option rather than, you know, tick a box of which of the four above do you think sounds good.
So do we need a consultant to come on board and run with this and actually get the
Another
information?
50,000.
Well, that's, yeah.
I mean, we're faced with that on many fronts. I mean, when we don't have staff in-house to do a lot of these things. And any time you step out, you know, to have independent studies done or independent survey takers or whatnot, yeah, it costs money. So you just add it to the bill. The other irony too, if the building were sold and we chose to renovate this town hall and the annex, we have no idea where we would put people for 12 months. It's not like we have an office complex down the street that we could rent some space from. If you had to move everyone and the records here to another location for 12 to 18 months during renovation, where would it be?
The old high school.
Yeah, the old high school. Right, it's sold already, so that's how we're getting the money to renovate the building. So, I mean, it's kind of a quandary. I mean, there's really no place to go.
It is. I mean, they've looked at it. I think they actually looked at building an addition onto this place at one point. And the thought was that they would build the addition, move this group into the addition,
Right,
rehab this section, move the annex group into here.
Right.
But it's still, anytime you're doing construction on the site that you're working at, it's not ideal.
Not very efficient.
yeah.
I would just say on the survey question, wouldn't need $50,000 in an external consultant. I mean, you can actually do surveys, you know, pretty cheaply and easily.
So would it be a phone survey or
Well, there's
a
different
card
ways.
survey? Or?
You could do it in different ways. It could be an online survey for something like surveymonkey.com. You could do, you know, we have everybody's mailing address in town. You know, we could do a paper survey, and it doesn't, you know, it wouldn't need to be
What do we do for the master plan?
that fancy.
So for the master plan, we did a online survey, which really wasn't filled out by too many people at the time, and then we mailed out a survey. I think we counted 2,500, 3,000 of them, hand count, which I never want to do again.
I remember that.
And they did a recent survey, I think, on the broadband, probably about 2 years ago.
That was done with volunteer help, it did no cost to the town.
Yeah.
And they did a survey online, and
I never even heard about that one.
Well, we went to that.
maybe it didn't get to everybody in town, but I got a very good response, and was able to garner enough support for proceeding with greater effort in bringing broadband into the town-wide areas.
I mean, I think you could start with an online for very low cost, just to see what kind of response you get on an online thing. And, you know, and then if we get 3,000 responses online, okay, we're successful getting kind of a which way does the wind blow from the public.
Well, it'd be on the town website, right? And it'd be a banner or something right on the website saying, survey on municipal office buildings or something. And so a lot of people go to that routinely for all kinds of reasons. So they would see that, and then you could have paper surveys available in all the town offices if some people walk by, or even have a stack of them at Lee's and places like that. So I think you can get quite a broad reach with minimal effort.
Right, so the excise tax bills generally go out early April. So people will pay online. I would think that a lot of people pay their excise tax bill online versus mail. I don't know. I mean, I'm just so used to doing online everything. So to me, I think that everybody
There's
just
a lot of people who don't though, because they charge you to play online.
Yeah.
But it's the same as the price of a stamp, 50 cents. It's only 50 cents. Unless you're using a credit card, then it's a percentage. But if you're using a check, you know, a electronic check,
Yeah.
then it's only 50 cents. But anyway, I mean, that, at least then you get some exposure to the website of a lot of people. You know, the next tax installment payment that's due, when is that?
Yeah.
February 1st or whenever?
I think
You
they
do
go out
a-
January, right?
You could do an insert with, when they mail those out, just a little flyer insert.
Right,
Click, go to this URL to fill in this survey.
right.
Next tax bill goes out in February, right?
I thought January.
Do we still send the bills out from here?
No, we have a company that sends them out for us.
Right,
Yeah, we're no longer stuffing envelopes.
right. But I wonder if they would, how much they would charge to include an insert. But, yeah,
So Tony, as far as the school department, if we keep the building for another year, has the school committee discussed whether or not they're gonna stay in there, or they have other plans, or?
Well, we don't have anything now, Jim. We actually discussed this for a little while last night at a workshop that we had, again, what's gonna happen moving forward. No, I'm sure everyone would be fine with just keeping it, things as they are for another year, But no, we don't have anything on the table right now as far as adding it.
So we have no option. There's no option of not keeping it. That's not an option. Just we're gonna stack the school department in here or something. There is no option.
Do we want to, it's getting on, it's an hour now, and do we want, I mean, we've agreed, we made a motion to go to the selectmen with our further recommendation. Do we want to have another meeting in a couple of weeks right after New Year's or something, and sort of drill down more on the survey, the whole issue of the survey, and how to do that, implement it? And maybe in the meantime, people have some ideas of how to pull that together, and just handle that in our next meeting?
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds good to me.
I think that works.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we do
So,
that?
Set something up for right after the new year, if that works on people's calendars.
Okay, let's check the schedule, we'll get something out probably the second Wednesday, or depending on what our other meetings fall. Or third Wednesday of January,
Yeah.
okay?
And I will volunteer to put some thoughts together on that surveying mechanism, methodology, process. So my full-time job is a marketing director, so I know enough about that kind of stuff to get me into trouble. So yeah,
You're getting yourself
You
into
already
trouble right
did,
now,
so-
you're already getting yourself in
Trouble,
trouble. You step forward, well, we all step back, so you're already getting yourself into trouble.
But yeah, no, I'm happy
No,
to
that'd be great.
put some thoughts together just for everybody's edification, hopefully.
Great.
I think that's a better way to go about it than the ballot question, because people don't understand. You go to take a ballot vote, you don't really know what you're voting for.
Right.
You don't have the information.
And that's what happened with the Diamond vote.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't
Now, if you
well
do it like
understood.
this,
It wasn't well advertised or,
Right.
discussed or explained, and boom.
It's easy to say no.
All right,
All right, anything else?
nothing else?
We have any other topics that we came in last?
No.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Right.
Aye.